Let's talk about trade wars. The story we're told is simple, almost cinematic. Two superpowers locked in a high-stakes battle for economic dominance. But is that really the whole picture or just the headline? America versus China. Tariffs, tech theft, two giants clashing on the world stage. It's the narrative that fills our news feeds and rattles the global markets. Trump made China the villain, turning trade into a weapon and headlines into ammunition. But the real story? It's much bigger and far more complicated than a simple rivalry. The economic war that started under Trump and quietly continues under new leadership has a much broader, more ambitious goal than most people realize. It's not just about stopping China's rise. It's about controlling the entire global system, setting the rules, shaping the future, and making sure the world's most critical technologies stay in American hands. The US wants to stay king of the technological hill, and that means keeping rivals, and even close allies, dependent on American innovation, supply chains, and approval. This isn't a simple duel between two countries, it's a global brawl, with America setting the rules, redrawing alliances, and deciding who gets access to the world's most advanced tech. Enter the Netherlands, a small country you wouldn't expect to be a battleground in this high-tech conflict, but one that suddenly found itself at the center of the storm. Hidden in Dutch industrial parks are companies making the microchips that power everything from your phone to your car, your laptop to your refrigerator. These chips are the lifeblood of the modern world. One of those companies, Nexperia, just became the first major casualty in a war America is waging not just on its enemies, but on its own allies, countries it once called partners. The US used economic pressure, diplomatic muscle, and behind-the-scenes threats to force the Dutch government to seize a private company, sending shockwaves through Europe and beyond. This is a story of secret deals, backroom threats, and a global supply chain held hostage by geopolitics. Every decision ripples across continents, affecting jobs, prices, and the very devices we rely on. The new battlefield isn't mud and trenches, it's silicon and circuit boards, where the victors control the future and the losers risk being left behind. The opening shots of this new war, not cannon fire, but a confidential memo from Washington to The Hague, a quiet command with global consequences. Forget what you thought you knew about the trade war. It's no longer just about tariffs or trade deficits, it just went global, and the stakes have never been higher. And it's a lot scarier than you think. The world is watching, and the next move could change everything. Who is Nexperia, and why does it matter? Nexperia makes the basic chips that keep the modern world running. Billions of them, in everything from cars to toothbrushes. Once part of Dutch giant Philips, Nexperia was bought by China's Wingtech in 2017. That's the problem. Chinese ownership. To Washington, Nexperia became a potential Trojan horse, an asset China could use to disrupt supply chains or steal tech. Nexperia insisted it was independent, but in the new tech Cold War, perception is reality. Chinese ownership was a red flag the US couldn't ignore. It was a vulnerability in Western tech dominance. The US decided it was a thread that had to be pulled, no matter what unraveled. The stage was set for a showdown, and the consequences would be global. Here's where things get shadowy. In the heart of The Hague, far from the public eye, a series of covert moves began to unfold, setting the stage for a high-stakes international drama. US pressure on the Dutch government started quietly. Phone calls, private meetings, diplomatic threats. American officials made it clear this wasn't just business, it was about global power and security. The message was unmistakable: deal with Nexperia, or we will. The threat loomed: blacklists, sanctions, and cutting off access to critical US technology. The stakes were enormous, not just for the companies involved, but for the entire Dutch economy. The Dutch faced an impossible choice: protect private property and uphold their own laws, or risk angering their most important ally. The pressure was relentless, and the consequences of defiance were made painfully clear. So, they made a secret deal. Using a newly enacted investment screening law, the Dutch government declared Nexperia a national security threat, a move that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. They forced Wingtech to sell its stake in Nexperia. When Wingtech refused to comply, the Dutch authorities took the extraordinary step of seizing the company outright, sending shockwaves through the business world. Officially, it was a Dutch decision, but behind the scenes, everyone knew who was pulling the strings. The influence of Washington was unmistakable, shaping outcomes from afar. The Dutch had been strong-armed into violating their own free market principles, forced to choose geopolitics over economic ideals. The sense of unease was palpable among officials and business leaders alike. The seizure of Nexperia sent a powerful message. For US allies, sovereignty is conditional. Even the most established democracies could be compelled to bend under pressure. In the escalating tech war with China, you're either with America or you're a problem. Neutrality was no longer an option in this new era of global competition. The rules had changed. and the world was watching closely. The fallout from The Hague was just beginning, and its impact would ripple far beyond Dutch borders, reshaping alliances and the future of global tech. Think Nexperia was a one-off? Think again. Look at ASML, the Dutch company with a monopoly on machines that make the world's most advanced chips. The US has worked for years to block ASML from selling to China, using every tool, threats, lobbying, and diplomatic pressure. The Dutch government caved, denying export licenses to China. Officially, these were Dutch decisions. In reality, they followed Washington's orders. First, the US blocked future tech sales to China through ASML. Now, it's removing Chinese influence from Europe by seizing Nexperia. The playbook: identify a critical tech asset, assess its China connection, and apply overwhelming pressure until the ally falls in line. This isn't partnership, it's dominance. The pattern is clear, and it's only accelerating. The new American playbook: turn global commerce into a weapon. The old era of free trade is over. Interdependence is now seen as a weakness. The US arsenal blacklists, export bans, and extraterritorial controls. The entity list is an economic death sentence. Just ask Huawei. Export controls go further. If a product uses any US tech, America claims the right to decide who gets it. This gives the US unprecedented control over the global tech supply chain. Allies are forced into compliance. No shots fired. The seizure of Nexperia is a case in point. The Dutch NUACT, or C Nexperia, blacklisted and destroyed anyway. It was a choice made under duress. Economic imperialism, 21st century style. The world's tech future is being redrawn by force, and the stakes keep rising. For a while, China protested but didn't hit back hard. The Nexperia seizure changed that. Beijing decided to show it could play the same game. China's weapon: rare earth elements, 17 metals essential for modern tech, from EVs to missiles. China controls over 80% of the world's supply and the processing. After Nexperia, China announced strict export controls on key rare earths. The official reason: national security. The real message: retaliation. Prices skyrocketed. Manufacturers panicked. Suddenly the West realized its green energy and defense sectors were at risk. China's counterpunch landed hard. The economic war had entered a new, dangerous phase. It was no longer one-sided. Now both sides had weapons and weren't afraid to use them. The conflict was escalating fast. China's rare earth move sent shockwaves through global markets. EV makers, green energy firms, and defense contractors saw their stocks plummet. The US tried to project calm, but everyone knew. Building new rare earth supply chains takes years. The West was caught flat-footed. Panic buying drove prices even higher. Rumors swirled. Would China restrict more materials? The just-in-time global supply chain was exposed as fragile in a time of economic war. The true cost of this conflict became clear. Jobs, green transitions, even medical equipment were at risk. The Nexperia move, once seen as clever, had triggered a global crisis. The world held its breath, waiting for the next move. The new Cold War was heating up, and no one was safe from the fallout. The stakes had never been higher. Where was Europe? Stuck, caught between the US and China. America is Europe's security guarantor. China is its economic lifeline. Decoupling from China, as the US wants, would devastate Europe's economy. The Nexperia crisis exposed the impossibility of Europe's balancing act. The US is forcing Europe to choose sides, but every step toward Washington risks retaliation from Beijing. China's rare earth controls were a warning sign with America. Pay the price. Europe talks of strategic autonomy, but for now, it's just talk. Europe is a battlefield in a war it didn't start and can't control. Piece by piece, its economic ties are being dismantled, by force and by fear. The cost of choosing is rising by the day. This is the new Cold War. No nuclear missiles, no armies clashing on distant battlefields, but a conflict fought in boardrooms, factories, and shipping lanes. The weapons are invisible, the front lines are everywhere, and the stakes are higher than ever. Today, global supply chains have become the battlegrounds where nations compete for power and influence. The weapons in this war are not guns or bombs, but export controls, blacklists, and relentless economic pressure. Governments wield these tools to choke off rivals' access to critical technology, hoping to tip the balance in their favor. The soldiers are not in uniform. They are engineers designing the next breakthrough, trade lawyers crafting airtight regulations, and diplomats negotiating tense deals at international summits. Each plays a crucial role in this high-stakes contest. The prize is immense: control over the technology that will define the future. Semiconductors, artificial intelligence, green energy, whoever leads in these fields will shape the world's destiny for decades to come. The Nexperia seizure was more than a legal move, it was a declaration. The US signaled it will pressure allies and take bold action to ensure victory in the tech war, even if it means upending old alliances. The illusion of a limited, targeted conflict has vanished. America's ambition is clear: global dominance over the technologies that power our lives, from microchips to clean energy. But China is not backing down. Its rare earth retaliation proved this won't be a one-sided fight. Both sides are willing to escalate, and the world is caught in the crossfire. Every move and counter-move sends shockwaves through the global economy, bringing more instability, uncertainty, and pain for ordinary people everywhere. The world we live in now, your next car, your job, your future, could all become collateral damage in this struggle for technological supremacy. No one is immune from the consequences. The battle for Nexperia may be over, but the larger war is just beginning. Each headline is a reminder that this conflict is far from settled. The next fronts are already emerging: lithium, cobalt, and the global standards that will shape tomorrow's technology. The race is on to secure the resources and rules of the future. This isn't a distant problem for politicians and CEOs. It's here, now, shaping the devices in your pocket, the jobs in your city, and the choices you'll face tomorrow. The question is, are you ready for it? Because this battle will touch every life, demanding resilience, awareness, and adaptation from us all. The sun is rising on a new era of competition. The war for tomorrow's technology is just getting started, and its outcome will define our world.